Can't believe it's been almost a month. And you're probably wondering what I've been up to. I'll leave some timestamps here in case you want to skip some of the really boring parts. Now let's dive right in. Unreal Engine 5.1 was released. I did go ahead and update my engine. There are pages of updates. The one thing I know of that affects me right now is they updated the Chaos Physics engine. And now my lantern no longer spontaneously leaves my player's hand. So that's pretty exciting. The other big update I can see myself using right away is the way that the engine handles inputs. You now create individual input blueprints rather than access everything through the project settings. I only just learned about this today, so we'll see what happens. Found out Unreal had a built-in system for physical surfaces. I set this for the surfaces I figured I would be using: grass, wood, metal, water, concrete. And then once again through YouTube tutorials, I found out how to use meta sounds to create sources for footstep sounds. What looks to just be a lot of squiggly lines sets pitch and volume for different types of footsteps. You have the normal stepping, the walk-run, sprinting, jumping, and landing. Here in the input, it's going to take an array of elements, and it's going to choose a random one. I've inputted the concrete steps that came with the ALS plugin. I also imported all the other footsteps that I had gotten back when this was a Unity project, with the exception of the water one, which is new and actually sounds the best now. I'll probably end up going back and changing all the other footsteps. I used the existing animation notifier and just made my changes to that. The biggest change is here where it uses another line trace. This line trace comes from the actual model's foot to determine what surface it's walking on. It will then spawn a sound appropriate to that surface type. The way these animations work is you can choose a frame to create a sound. So every animation where the model's foot touches the ground, I can set an animation notifier. This then tells the blueprint to play a sound. This particular tutorial also included both a left and a right trigger. Depending on which foot is on which surface, it will play a different sound. In sort of my test level here, I've created 4 different surfaces on these planks. You see the grass, the metal, the water, and the wood. So depending on where the foot is, it will play the sound. So if I'm walking 1 foot on water and 1 foot on metal, it will play the sounds accordingly. I've worked on the UI a little bit. I changed the default sort of orange outline to now more of a glow. It even has a bit of a pulse to it. So now when you press the interaction key, it will display the item in front of you. If you move your mouse around, you can sort of inspect it. You can even move the mouse wheel up or down to zoom in and out. If you hit the interaction key again, it will then add to your inventory. I've moved the inventory over to the side of the screen. Clicking on the item, dropping it works the same as it did before. If I use the item, it will again bring up the inspection. This is all very much a work in progress. Something else I worked on was this bookcase. So I used some models from TurboSquid. TurboSquid is a website that has lots of free and paid for models. I put them all together to make a single blueprint. This bookcase contains a secret book. It outlines in the same way that any other item will outline. If you interact with it, the bookcase will open. And then down here I'll have another room. On the other side of the bookcase, right now it's just a button. But if you press the interact key, the bookcase will open up from that side. The bookcase blueprint is fairly simple. It does one thing, and that is when the bookshelf drag animation is triggered, it will play the animation and play the sound. You can see most of the books here are the same. When the game loads, it will choose a random skin for each book. So here is just the book and the button that triggers the animation for the bookcase. This is so that when you hovered over the book, it would provide the outline. Otherwise, I couldn't get it to either outline just the book and function properly, or outline the whole bookcase because it was one blueprint. My other difficulty was being behind the bookcase and still being able to highlight the book. In order to prevent this, I added a second trace. This first trace checks for visible objects. The second trace then checks for interactable objects. If the visible object and the interactable object are the same object, it will then keep going through the tree. This ultimately fixed the bookcase issue. If the player looked at the back of the bookcase, that would trigger the visible hit, and would stop. The second trace, even though it could see the book wasn't visible, and so the two objects weren't equal. I've also added in a metahuman as the playable character. Currently he's pretty basic, but he does function in the same way as the locomotion character. I did this in the same way that I did the Mixamo character. Using the retargeter, I had to unassign any metacarpal bones to get the fingers to work right. And in the blueprint, I had to set the parts of the metahuman to the leader pose component. Otherwise, he wouldn't move correctly. And I'll have to redo the holding of the lantern. His hand is not in the same position as the locomotion character. There's some more clipping through the shirt. I know a key part of being a game developer is playing more games, just like a key part to being an author would be to read more books. So in the past week, I played through Outlast for the first time. I had had it in my Steam library for years, but only touched it once or twice for a brief moment. There were definitely some things I liked and some things that I didn't. At times, I thought the night vision from the camcorder was a neat effect, and at other times, if you didn't use your camcorder, you simply couldn't see, and I didn't find fumbling around in the dark all that fun. The best looking part of the game was actually the brief moments that you lost your camcorder. The creators really focused on good atmosphere and lighting during that time, and I wish they would have relied on that more rather than rely on the night vision of the camcorder. I also noticed the attention to detail on the animations. It was neat to see the player's hand on the door frame, the way you shifted when you were crouched or prone. It was a great way to feel more immersed. Jump scares seemed well placed and not overused. I still preferred the supernatural feeling, the religious overtones, and the asylum setting, rather than the high-tech, sort of sci-fi secret base angle. And as much as I love hiding in lockers, waiting for the enemy to check the locker that I'm clearly not in, I'm unsure I'll play through Whistleblower. Still a good experience to add to my knowledge pool. I think one thing that I've been losing, or maybe that I never had, was focus. Definitely not the drive or the motivation. I sit down and work on something, even little, almost every day. I've seen other devs using a Trello board to keep their focus. Basically an organized list of tasks to help you better achieve your goals. Up until now, I've just kind of done a little bit here and a little bit there, trying to figure out exactly what I need to do to piece together the mechanics of this game. But it's definitely been without focus or organization. I'm sure I will stray from this task list, but it at least helps me gather my thoughts and gives me something to work towards. A challenge that I keep thinking about is how to make sure that the game is fun. I have the story in my head, but as far as how the game plays out, my thoughts keep going to a board game called Mansions of Madness. I wonder how I can make an experience like Mansions of Madness into a solo video game experience. A game where you start with a mystery, search around the town or the mansion, uncover clues, fight or hide from monsters, and ultimately uncover the forbidden secrets you wished you hadn't unearthed. I still have a long way to go, but this is the direction that I'm headed. Thank you for joining me on another devlog. Your subscriptions and likes mean the world to me. Leave me a comment below. I love hearing your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions. And remember to always carry a light into the darkness.